Before we dive in, imagine waking up beside a creature that could tear you apart in a heartbeat, and choosing to rest there anyway. If you want more intense sci-fi HFY stories like this, make sure to like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe so you never miss a tale of humanity's true power among the stars. They watched from the darkened command room, silent except for the occasional flicker of consoles reflecting off their pallid, segmented skin. Rain sheeted down the reinforced observation window, blurring the dense jungle beyond into shifting shadows and rippling silver lines. Within that savage world walked a lone human male, and every alien eye in the room tracked him with the kind of morbid curiosity reserved for execution chambers. Commander Vorax folded two of his arms behind his back, the posture accentuating his armored chest plates. His mandibles clicked in irritation as he leaned toward the main display. "How is he still alive?" he rasped. His voice vibrated through the chamber, setting a low hum in the metal flooring. The junior xenobiologist beside him adjusted the zoom with trembling fingers. "Thermals confirm it's a baseline human male. No exosuit. No visible weapons. Vital signs normal, though his cortisol levels are unusually low for this environment." "Unusually low?" Vorax scoffed. "They should be catastrophic. This territory is apex predator territory. Nothing survives here for long." Outside, the human moved steadily along a muddy path winding through colossal trees whose trunks were armored in curling plates of bark. He wore tattered cargo pants, a torn thermal shirt, and a thin cloak made from woven reeds and predator hide. His hair, thick and matted with sweat, clung to his brow as he scanned the undergrowth with eyes that revealed neither panic nor arrogance. Only purpose. "Where's the subject heading?" Vorax demanded. "Toward the western basin, sir," said Rollick, the youngest of the research team, his amber eyes wide with both fear and awe. "He's entering the central hunting ground." Another researcher gave a muted hiss of alarm. No, that's suicide. The apex is nesting there tonight." Commander Vorax said nothing. He simply watched, narrowing his eyes as the human shifted his cloak, revealing deep scars along his side. They were old, healed into rugged welts, each one a testament to violence survived. Vorax felt a tightening in his chest, a flicker of something uncomfortably close to respect. The team's comm system crackled softly as an external perimeter drone pinged a new life signature. Rollick quickly rerouted the feed to the main display. The grainy infrared resolved into a massive silhouette moving low to the ground, its limbs heavy and muscled, its long tail flicking with restless anticipation. Twin bioluminescent eyes glowed faint blue in the darkness. The creature moved with fluid, silent power, its nostrils flaring as it sampled the human's scent trail. "It's hunting him," Rollick whispered. The predator stepped into the open, and even through the storm and low-resolution thermal feed, its size was staggering. 3 meters long, nearly 1.5 meters tall at the shoulder, with dense layered muscle sheathed in shaggy oil-slick fur. Its skull was elongated, lined with serrated fangs protruding even when its jaws were closed, and its paws sank into the mud with an almost delicate tread, each step silent despite its mass. Vorax leaned forward, claws tapping the console. "Target audio. I want to hear what's about to happen." A thin static hiss filled the observation room, layered over with the rhythmic drum of rain and the soft swish of moving undergrowth. Then, impossibly calm amid it all, came the human's voice. "I was wondering when you'd show up." He didn't turn to face the predator. Instead, he crouched by the root of a towering ironwood tree, gathering damp branches into a small pile. The predator padded forward until its massive head loomed just above his shoulder, exhaling a slow, rumbling breath that stirred his hair. It could have snapped his neck in a heartbeat, or slashed his throat open before he even saw its claws. Instead, it lowered itself to the ground beside him with a soft huff, its tail curling loosely around its flank. The human reached out without looking and laid his hand against the creature's thick fur, fingers spreading to scratch behind its ears. The predator blinked once, slow and content. He's petting it?" Rollick whispered, his mandibles falling slack. "No," Vorax growled, his mind racing through every known ethological database. "No human has ever domesticated this species. Its aggression index is absolute. They kill anything that moves. Even each other." Outside, the human drew a worn magnesium rod from his belt pouch and struck it against his blade, sending sparks into the nest of damp tinder. It took 3 strikes before a fragile curl of smoke rose, coaxed gently to life by his cupped hands. Flames flickered into the night, illuminating his face, angular, scarred, calm. The predator shifted closer, laying its massive head in his lap as it watched the fire dance. "He's completely exposed," said one of the other researchers. "If he sleeps, he'll be torn apart by other predators." "Unless," Rollick murmured, eyes wide, "unless they fear the apex. And it fears him." Vorax said nothing. His 4 eyes scanned every flicker of data pouring down the displays: heart rates, thermal overlays, atmospheric shifts, seismic disturbances. Nothing made sense. The predator should have attacked him. The human should have fled in terror or frozen in helpless panic. Instead, he was running gloved fingers through the creature's dense mane, humming softly under his breath as though lulling a restless child to sleep. The fire cast shifting shadows up the surrounding trees, revealing claw marks gouged into their trunks, tangled tufts of torn fur, and bones gnawed clean to splinters. The alien team had documented every kill in this hunting ground for months. Nothing left alive here lasted more than hours. Yet this human, unarmored, unarmed, sat beside the embodiment of death itself as though it were a camp dog seeking warmth. "Should we intervene?" Rollick asked hesitantly. "He's only one human, but if he has some behavioral trait that pacifies apex predators, the implications for colonization and biosecurity?" "Negative," Vorax snapped. "We observe. We document. If he survives the night, then we decide." The observation deck fell silent but for the drumming rain and crackling fire feed. The predator's massive chest rose and fell in a deep, rumbling rhythm, half purr and half subsonic growl. Its ears twitched at every distant movement in the jungle. Lightning flashed far across the basin, illuminating miles of black forest in stark silver before thunder rolled in heavy waves. For a long moment nothing happened. The human simply rested, eyes half closed as he scratched the predator's jawline. Then, as if sensing something beyond the range of alien sensors, the creature raised its head, hackles rippling in waves down its spine. Its gaze swept across the jungle, pupils narrowing into slits of glowing cobalt. The human didn't reach for a weapon. Instead he spoke softly. "Easy. It's just the scouts again." Vorax froze. "What did he say?" Translating, he said, "Just the scouts again," Rollick confirmed, voice trembling. "He knows we're here." Outside, the predator rumbled deep in its chest, a resonance so low the research station's floor panels vibrated. Its gaze shifted unerringly toward the hidden camouflaged outpost. For a second, Vorax could have sworn its eyes met his across all that distance, piercing every stealth field and reactive coating their engineers had devised. The human smiled faintly into the darkness. Then he lay down beside the predator, using its massive flank as a pillow. The creature adjusted slightly to cradle him against its warmth, curling its tail over his feet like a protective blanket. Within moments, the human's breathing slowed into the steady cadence of sleep. The predator remained awake. Its eyes stayed open, glowing softly in the rain-washed darkness, scanning the jungle with unblinking vigilance. For every shadow that moved, for every creature that slithered or padded past the firelight, it flicked an ear or flexed its claws, issuing a silent warning into the damp night air. Inside the observation deck no one spoke. No one moved. For the first time since arriving on this world, Vorax felt the cold prickle of something deeper than fear. The data streams scrolling down the displays blurred before his eyes as he considered the implications. This wasn't symbiosis. This wasn't domestication. This was something far older, far more primal. It was trust. The most dangerous bond imaginable on a death world. Outside, rain continued its relentless drumming against the earth. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the sleeping human and the predator curled around him in a single breathtaking tableau of savage serenity. And as the alien team watched in frozen silence, each felt a flicker of an unsettling, unspoken truth take root within them. A truth that would keep them awake long after the human fell asleep. They weren't observing who ruled this world. They were witnessing the world choosing who it would allow to rule it. The predator did not sleep. Its massive head lay across the human's chest, rising and falling with each calm breath, but its eyes never closed. Occasionally, its ears twitched at distant calls in the jungle or the shuffle of nocturnal scavengers creeping along the periphery of the firelight. Each time, its pupils narrowed to slits, assessing whether the movement posed any threat to the man curled against its flank. None did. The lesser predators melted back into the shadows, unwilling to test the silent guardian's patience. Inside the observation post, silence had stretched for hours. Vorax remained rigid, claws drumming against the console with growing agitation. The rest of the team worked with a hushed urgency, tracking shifting thermal signatures and compiling biometric readouts. All data suggested the same impossible truth. The predator's vitals indicated alertness, but no aggression. The human's vitals remained as stable as though he slept in a secure orbital barracks, not on the damp forest floor surrounded by death. Rollick exhaled a shaky breath, eyes locked on the monitor. "It's been 6 hours, sir." 6 hours without incident. Vorax flicked his gaze toward the young xenobiologist, mandibles curling. "Define incident when a human is using the galaxy's most aggressive land predator as a mattress." "I only mean," Rollick hesitated, searching for precision in his translation buffer. "I mean, we're seeing something never documented before. Not on this world. Possibly not on any." Vorax turned back to the screen without comment. The fire had long burned down to embers, illuminating the clearing with a faint, pulsing glow. Mist drifted low across the ground, curling around the predator's muscled shoulders as it shifted to better shield the human from the creeping chill. In the darkness beyond the thermal range of their sensors, distant howls rose and fell, harmonizing into a feral chorus that set primal dread crawling along Rollick's carapace. The predator did not respond to the chorus. It simply watched, ears flicking back slightly at each scream, as though memorizing the signature of every voice. The human mumbled something in his sleep, shifting closer, and the creature lowered its head to nuzzle his hair before resuming its vigil. Rollick swallowed hard. "Sir, it's behaving like a bonded companion." "Don't insult our intelligence with superstition," Vorax snapped. "This species does not bond. Their young attempt to kill littermates before weaning. They are solitary hunters with aggression markers that remain elevated until death." "But enough." Vorax's mandibles clacked shut, punctuating his command. His 4 eyes refocused on the readout streaming beside the thermal feed. "We will gather behavioral data until dawn. Then we test direct contact protocols." Rollick stiffened. "Direct contact?" "Sir, with respect, if you intend capture." "Observe," Vorax said coldly. "Do not predict." Outside, the predator lifted its head, ears pricking forward, muscles tightening in a ripple down its back. Its gaze locked onto the far tree line. In the infrared feed, a flicker of movement resolved into a smaller shape, skulking low through the underbrush. The creature released a low, rumbling growl, chest vibrating against the human's back. The man stirred, eyes opening slowly. He did not jolt awake. There was no fear, no sudden scramble for a weapon. Instead, he blinked once, exhaled, and turned his head to press his cheek against the predator's massive shoulder. The creature licked his hair once, a slow drag of its rasping tongue, then rose smoothly to its feet. The human sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What is it?" he asked softly. The predator's growl deepened, vibrating so low it rattled the microphone feeds within the observation post. Its ears pinned back, pupils dilating into dark pools of focus. Then, with terrifying silence for its size, it stepped forward into the trees, vanishing into darkness. The human reached for his blade and tucked it into his belt but made no move to follow. Instead, he built the fire back up, coaxing flame from the ashes with practiced patience, and settled cross-legged beside it, eyes fixed on the trees. Minutes passed. Then a sudden violent rustle erupted from the undergrowth. The predator burst back into the clearing, jaws clamped around the throat of another predator nearly as large as itself. Blood sprayed across the leaf litter, steaming in the cold night air. The creature shook its prey once, snapping the spine with an audible crack, then dropped the corpse at the human's feet and stepped back, chest heaving with exertion. The human studied the kill calmly. He reached out, fingers brushing over the dead creature's muzzle, then glanced up at his companion with a small nod. "Good," he said quietly. "You're getting faster." Inside the observation post, every alien in the chamber sat frozen, transfixed by the casual intimacy of the exchange. Rollick felt his heart hammering so hard it made his breathing ragged. Did he just praise it for a kill? "Replay audio," Vorax ordered, though his voice was a harsh whisper. The translation repeated in flat mechanical tones. "Good. You're getting faster." Vorax's eyes narrowed to slits. "This isn't taming. This is training." "But, sir, it's not possible," Rollick whispered. "That species cannot be trained. Their neurology is too primitive for command-reward conditioning." Apparently not for him. They watched as the predator circled the clearing once, spraying territorial markers along tree trunks and clawing deep gouges into the bark, then settled back down beside the human, licking blood from its jaws with slow satisfaction. The man leaned against its flank again, eyes half closing as he stared into the fire, the crackling flames dancing across his angular features and hollowed cheeks. Dawn came slowly, slanting through the dense canopy in fractured rays that illuminated swirling mist across the forest floor. Within the observation post, the alien team worked in silence, each member haunted by the final words that crackled through their comms hours before. The drone feeds were offline. Thermal scans showed no trace of the human or his predator companion. Only the pulsing heartbeats of lesser creatures flickered across the monitors, each small life unaware of the tectonic shift taking place in their world. Commander Vorex stood motionless before the central console, arms folded tight across his armored chest plates. His eyes tracked the scrolling readouts with cold precision, though his mind churned in silent chaos. No colony model accounted for this. No biocontrol strategy had contingency for a single unarmed human commanding the deadliest predator in planetary history. Rallick hovered nearby, fidgeting with the scanner calibration module in nervous repetition. His voice broke the stillness like a dropped weapon. "Sir, if we deploy another drone strike." "No," Vorex snapped. His mandibles clicked shut with finality. "No more drones. No more tranquilizers. He knows our tactics now." Rallick hesitated, mandibles trembling slightly as he searched for words. "Then, what is our next move?" Vorex's gaze narrowed, focusing on a pulsing beacon in the upper quadrant of the holo display. "We bring him in face to face." The junior xenobiologist swallowed hard. "Sir, with respect, direct engagement violates every planetary hazard protocol. The Apex could." "The Apex is irrelevant," Vorex growled, turning to fix Rallick with an unblinking stare. "He is the Apex. That man. And if he is allowed to remain uncontrolled, we forfeit any chance of subjugating this world. Prepare a field team." Rallick hesitated, mandibles quivering. "Who will lead it, sir?" Vorex's lip plates peeled back in a silent snarl. "I will." Outside, the forest woke in subdued murmurs of insect drones and cautious bird calls. The rain had ceased sometime before dawn, leaving the undergrowth drenched and steaming in pale light. The team moved with disciplined haste, exosuits flickering with active camo fields that distorted their outlines into shimmering ghosts. Vorex led them down the narrow service ramp, boots sinking into mud as he swept his plasma rifle across the trees. Each step carried the metallic scent of ozone from his weapon's charged coils. The forest smelled of rotting wood, fungal spores, predator musk. Every sensory input warned of death and hidden violence. Yet what set Vorex's nerves alight was not what he heard, but what he did not hear. No movements larger than a ground scavenger. No echoing roars or territory calls from the apex. No human footprints. The jungle was silent with anticipation. They reached the site where the human had slept. The fire pit lay cold, gray ash scattered across flattened grass. Predator tracks circled the area, massive paws gouging deep into the mud, but no sign of a struggle or kill. Vorex knelt, claws brushing faint impressions near the ash ring. Human prints leading west. "He left hours ago," Rallick whispered behind him, scanning the perimeter with twitching antennae. "Then we follow," Vorex said, rising to his full height. "Activate thermal sweeps. Expand search grid to 2 kilometers." They moved swiftly through the trees, weaving between enormous armored trunks covered in dangling black moss. Vorex's mind ran calculations with mechanical precision. Engagement variables, risk probabilities, tranquilizer dosages scaled to human physiology. He repeated each factor like a mantra to drown out the primal dread that flickered beneath. This was no longer about biology or xenopsychology. This was about dominance, control, dominion. After an hour, the point scout raised a clenched fist, halting the team. Vorex stepped forward. Through a break in the trees, the land fell away into a wide basin strewn with massive stones and skeletal tree husks half sunk in stagnant water. Steam rose from cracked earth vents, curling around the scattered remains of old predator kills. And there, sitting cross-legged on a broad slab of stone in the center, was the human. He wore no cloak now, only his tattered shirt and cargo pants. His hair hung damp and wild around his face, streaked with ash and blood from the previous night's hunt. His eyes were closed, head bowed as though in meditation. The massive predator lay beside him, curled into a loose circle with its head resting across his legs. Its tail flicked lazily at biting insects. Neither showed any sign of surprise or alarm. Vorex motioned his team into a wide flanking formation. Active camo fields shimmered as they spread out, plasma rifles trained forward. He stepped into the clearing, boots crunching across gravel as he approached. At 15 meters, the predator lifted its head, ears pricking forward, eyes narrowing into cold, glowing slits. Its lips peeled back to reveal rows of serrated teeth. The human opened his eyes. Pale blue, clear as glacial ice, calm as a sleeping sea. He regarded Vorax with mild curiosity, as though watching a beetle crawl across his campfire stones. "You finally came out," he said softly, his voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing. "I was starting to think you'd leave me to my mourning." Vorax tightened his grip on his rifle, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Stand down, human. You are in restricted territory under sovereign claim. Identify yourself." The man tilted his head slightly. "Under sovereign claim?" He chuckled softly, running his fingers along the predator's ears. "Tell me, Commander, does your sovereignty reach the heart of a world that never asked for your arrival?" Vorax felt a flicker of irritation cut through his fear. "This planet is subject to colonial designation under the Galactic Expansion Treaty. You are an unregistered element jeopardizing ecological stabilization and apex control protocols. You will surrender for processing." The human studied him for a long moment. Then he exhaled softly and shifted forward. The predator rose with him, stretching its massive limbs before settling into a low crouch at his side, its head brushing his hip like a loyal warhound. "Surrender for processing." The human repeated the words as if tasting them, eyes distant. "I remember when that phrase meant something to me. Years ago. Before they left me here." Vorax's mandibles twitched. "Who left you?" For the first time, emotion flickered across the man's face. Amusement tinged with something darker, older. "Everyone." He placed his hand on the predator's broad skull. The creature rumbled low in its chest, a resonance that vibrated through the stone slab beneath Vorax's boots. "You still don't understand," the man said softly. "You think this is about control. About taming. But it's not. It never was." Vorax steadied his rifle, ignoring the tremble in his fingers. "This is your final warning. Submit peacefully or what?" The human's gaze sharpened suddenly, slicing into Vorax with scalpel precision. "You'll kill me? Capture me? Cage me for study?" His lips curled into a thin, humorless smile. "You can try." In a single smooth motion, he turned toward the predator and whispered something too low for the team's translators to catch. The creature's ears flicked forward, eyes blazing with sudden, violent focus. "Team, prepare stun barrage," Vorax ordered. His heart thundered against his ribs, adrenaline surging as targeting reticles flickered to life across his visor. The predator moved first. It launched forward in a blur of black fur and muscle, jaws snapping around the barrel of the nearest rifle. Bone-crunching force shattered the weapon as its wielder screamed, blood spraying across the steaming rocks. Before the others could react, the human was among them, moving with lethal grace. His blade flashed, edge catching sunlight as it sliced through an exposed respiratory tube, spraying a jet of thick copper-scented fluid across his chest. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, but the predator wove between them with supernatural speed, slamming its bulk into soldiers and tearing weapons from their hands with contemptuous ease. Vorax raised his rifle to fire, but the human was already in front of him, eyes calm, blade pressed against the joint seam of his armored throat. For a moment, neither moved. The jungle fell silent, the only sound the predator's rumbling growl as it pinned another alien to the ground with one massive paw. Vorax met the human's gaze and saw no rage there, no cruelty. Only cold, resigned certainty. "You should have left me alone," the human whispered. Vorax's mandibles quivered. You could lead them. You could command them all." The human's expression darkened, his lips tightening as he leaned forward, voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "I don't command them. They simply recognize their own." He stepped back, blade dripping with alien blood, and turned away. The predator released a final low snarl before padding to his side, nuzzling his hip with a soft whine. Together, they walked deeper into the steaming jungle, vanishing between twisted trunks and shadowed undergrowth. Around Vorax, the clearing reeked of blood and burned ozone. His soldiers lay broken or bleeding, their weapons shattered, their courage stripped bare. In the fading echoes of that silent retreat, a realization settled over him with cold finality. They had not come to tame this world. They had come to kneel before the only creature it would ever obey. Rollick leaned closer to the console, unable to tear his gaze away. "He's so calm. Even now." Vorax did not respond. His mind was racing with implications he could not fully quantify. Every colony projection, every environmental hazard index, every tactical assessment ever run on this planet had been based on one immutable assumption. The apex predator ruled through unchallenged, singular dominance. But here sat a human male, skin marked with old scars and fresh blood spatter, resting against a creature that should have torn him apart without hesitation. And it had hunted for him. The fire crackled louder as fresh resin caught flame, lighting the human's eyes from below. For a moment, his gaze flicked up, directly into the observation drone's concealed lens. Vorex felt his gut clench. "Ralik," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Did he just—" Before he could finish, the human smiled faintly and shook his head. "Sleep," he murmured, though whether it was to himself or to the predator was unclear. He closed his eyes again, resting one hand on the creature's massive paw. The predator lay its head atop his chest once more, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness as it resumed its silent vigil. Inside the observation post, tension coiled tight enough to hum in the air. Vorex spoke softly. "Prepare a capture drone." Ralik's head snapped around. "Sir, no. He knows we're here. That predator knows we're here. Any approach will trigger a defensive." "He is a human male," Vorex hissed, his mandibles clicking with each syllable. "One unarmed male. And he is our only chance to understand how this world functions. If he can command apex predators, he could command an entire ecosystem. Do you understand what that means for colonization protocols? For planetary control strategies? For bioweapon?" The predator's eyes flicked open again. Its ears turned unerringly toward the concealed drone port. Ralik felt his throat constrict as the creature's gaze locked onto the outpost's camouflaged hull with uncanny precision. The human did not open his eyes, but his mouth curled into a small, knowing smile. Vorex felt a chill skitter down his armored spine. "Deploy the drone," he said, voice shaking despite his iron control. "Now." The command console flickered as an acknowledgement code pulsed back. In the hangar below, machinery shifted, heavy hydraulics disengaging as the small capture drone detached from its maintenance cradle. Its stealth systems activated instantly, vanishing into the shadowed foliage with a faint whine of cooling vents. Outside, the predator's hackles rippled along its spine. It rose slowly, placing one paw across the human's chest as if to hold him in place. Its lips peeled back from gleaming fangs in a silent snarl directed into the darkness. The human exhaled softly, opening his eyes to stare into the treetops. He did not move. He simply reached up to lay his hand against the predator's chest. Its snarl faded into a low growl, vibrating through the night. Inside the observation post, Ralik's voice trembled. "Sir, he knows." Vorex did not respond. His eyes were locked onto the display as the drone approached the clearing, its tranquilizer dart loaded, targeting system pulsing softly against the predator's thermal silhouette. A single flicker of movement. A hiss as compressed gas propelled the dart through the air. The predator lunged. Its jaws snapped shut around the dart in mid-flight, crushing it between serrated fangs. Bright yellow tranquilizer fluid dripped from its muzzle as it growled deep and low. Its eyes turned, glowing with cold fury, and locked unerringly onto the drone. The human rose to his feet, movements smooth and unhurried. He stood beside the predator, one hand resting against its flank, his gaze sweeping the jungle around them. Slowly, he raised his eyes to stare directly into the drone's lens. For a moment, silence reigned. Then the human spoke, his voice carrying through the calm feed like a quiet thunderclap. "Leave." Inside the observation post, no one moved. No one breathed. Vorex felt his mandibles twitch, the primal prey instinct ringing through nerves that millions of years of evolution had not erased. The human's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of amused contempt passing across his face. "You're not the ones in control here." He turned his back on them. The predator pressed its massive head against his shoulder as he began walking deeper into the jungle, vanishing between the armored trees without a backward glance. The creature's glowing eyes flickered once through the foliage before the darkness swallowed them both. Inside the command room, the silent terror stretched long after the feed had gone dark. Ralik swallowed hard, his voice a thin whisper. "Commander, what do we do now?" Vorex did not answer. He was staring at the empty screen, eyes wide, as a cold realization settled into his bones. This was no ordinary human. This was something far older, far more dangerous. And they had just declared themselves prey. The forest closed around them as they walked, each step silent on damp earth despite the predator's immense size. Morning light filtered down in fractured shafts, illuminating drifting motes of pollen and steam rising from moss-laden rocks. The human moved with calm precision, blade sheathed at his hip, one hand resting lightly on the predator's broad shoulder. They moved as one organism, predator and man, hunter and master, each attuned to the other's rhythm. Behind them lay the remnants of the alien field team. Broken weapons, scorched ground, blood drying black against sun-bleached stones. The predator's wounds were shallow, already clotting beneath its shaggy fur. The human bore no injuries. His breathing remained calm, his eyes focused on the winding path ahead. For a time, silence reigned but for the sigh of wind in the high canopy. Then the predator paused, lifting its head to taste the breeze with flickering tongue. Its ears turned forward, alert, and it rumbled softly. The human's gaze followed, narrowing slightly as he scanned the shadows. His fingers tightened on the creature's fur, and he exhaled a slow, steady breath. "I know," he murmured. "They won't give up." High above, a sleek black shape drifted between the trees, its anti-grav turbines humming at a pitch too low for unenhanced ears to register. Inside the drop craft, Commander Vorex gripped the safety rail with iron determination, his armor scorched and dented from the earlier engagement. Around him stood 2 squads of elite enforcers clad in heavy exoframes, their plasma cannons armed and humming with contained fury. Vorex's 4 eyes burned with cold focus as the pilot announced descent vector lock. The craft angled down through the canopy, repulsor wash whipping leaves into furious spirals. Vorex activated the external audio feed. Within the wash of wind and creaking branches, he heard the man's calm voice. "You really want to do this again?" the human asked, looking up at the descending machine with quiet resignation. Vorex clenched his mandibles. "Target acquired. Open hatches. Deploy full suppression." Hydraulics screamed as the drop craft's side panels folded open. Armored troopers dropped into crouches, plasma cannons tracking forward with disciplined precision. The predator snarled, its hackles rippling along its spine, claws tearing gouges into the mossy ground. The human placed a hand on its shoulder, steadying it. His eyes never left the craft. "Hold," he said softly. The troopers advanced in a tightening semicircle, weapons humming, eyes locked on their HUD-targeting reticles. Vorex stepped down last, his boots thudding against the forest floor as he leveled his rifle. "End of the path, human," he rasped. "You cannot outrun orbital scans. You cannot fight armored divisions. You have one option remaining. Submit." The human regarded him with a weary calm. "Why does your kind always think numbers change anything?" Vorex's mandibles twitched in irritation. "Because they do. Even your apex beast cannot overcome plasma. This ends today." The human nodded slowly, exhaling a thin mist into the morning air. He crouched down beside the predator, pressing his forehead against its massive skull. Their eyes met in silent understanding. The creature whined low in its throat, then turned its gaze back to the armored ranks, lips peeling back to reveal yellowed fangs that glowed in the dim light. The human rose and stepped forward, placing himself directly between the predator and the troopers. "If you want me," he said, his voice ringing with quiet finality, "you go through him first." Vorex raised a clawed hand, signaling his men to hold fire. His eyes narrowed, calculating every possible outcome. "You would sacrifice your only advantage for sentiment? For an animal?" The man tilted his head slightly. "Is that what you see? An animal?" He gestured behind him without looking. "You see teeth and claws and muscle. You see something to cage, to weaponize, to fear. But I see loyalty. I see a bond forged in blood and survival and silence under the stars. He is not mine to command. He is mine to trust. And that," his eyes locked onto Vorex with unflinching intensity, "is why you will never understand this world." Vorex felt something tighten in his chest, something primal that twisted with cold dread. But his tactical mind refused surrender. Fire. In that instant, time seemed to fracture. The predator lunged forward with explosive force, its roar shaking moss from the branches overhead. Plasma bolts slammed into its shoulder plating, sizzling across its fur in brilliant flashes of blue and white. The creature did not falter. Its massive jaws clamped down around an armored trooper, lifting him from the ground and flinging him into 2 others with bone-crushing force. The human was already moving, slipping beneath a sweeping plasma arc to drive his blade up between an exoframe's chest plates. Sparks sprayed across his face as hydraulic fluid jetted from the punctured servos. Another trooper swung his cannon to bear on the human's back, but the predator intercepted, slamming its bulk into the trooper and crushing him into the mud with its paws. Plasma fire lit the clearing in pulsing flashes of deadly light. Screams echoed through the forest, mixing with the predator's snarling roars and the sharp grunt of each of the human's precise, lethal strikes. Vorex raised his rifle, targeting reticle locking onto the man's chest. He fired. A searing bolt of white-blue plasma lanced across the clearing. At the last instant, the predator twisted, intercepting the blast with its flank. The beam seared deep into its muscle, the scent of burning fur and flesh filling the air. It stumbled, blood spraying across the moss in dark, steaming arcs. The human spun, catching the creature's massive head in his arms as it collapsed to its side. Its breathing came ragged and wet, each exhalation bubbling red from the burned wound. The man pressed his forehead to its muzzle, eyes clenched shut against the tears burning behind them. "No," he whispered. "Not yet. Not now." The predator blinked slowly, its massive jaws opening in a shuddering gasp. Its eyes met his, unafraid. Then it released a low, rumbling purr, vibrating through his chest like a final heartbeat, before its breath rattled away into silence. For a moment the world stopped. The human rose slowly, cradling its massive head in trembling hands before lowering it gently to the earth. He stood, his silhouette backlit by the rising sun filtering through curling mist, his chest heaving with silent fury. His eyes lifted to meet Vorex's gaze. In that gaze Vorex saw death. Not the feral, mindless death of predators, but the cold, calculating death that built empires and raised civilizations to ash. The death that came not from hunger or fear, but from unbreakable will. The human stepped forward. Plasma bolts ripped past him, carving trenches in the earth, but he did not slow. His eyes burned with silent rage as he closed the distance between himself and Vorex, blade held low at his side. Vorex raised his rifle again, but too late. The blade punched up beneath his armored chin, slicing through reinforced plating and exiting the back of his skull. His vision fractured into darkness edged in crimson. The last thing he saw was the human's face, lit with firelight and the cold brilliance of morning. The man withdrew his blade, letting Vorex's body collapse to the moss. Around him, the surviving troopers froze, weapons trembling in armored grips as their targeting reticles flickered and died. The human stood alone among shattered bodies and smoking exoframes, his breath slow and even, his gaze distant. He turned back to the predator's still form, sinking to his knees beside it. His hands moved gently across its burned fur, fingers combing through matted hair as though brushing away sleep instead of death. For a time he sat in silence, his tears falling unseen into the damp earth. Then he rose, wiping blood from his blade against his shredded shirt. His eyes lifted to the trembling soldiers, and though his voice was quiet, it carried with unbreakable finality. "Tell your leaders," he said, each word etched in iron. "This world is not yours. It never was. Leave it. Or bury every last one of your kind here." He turned away from them, slipping his blade back into its sheath as he stepped into the forest's shadowed embrace. The mist closed behind him, swallowing his silhouette into memory. And though the jungle fell silent once more, the surviving aliens felt no relief. Only the creeping certainty that somewhere beyond their sensors, beneath the towering armored trees and drifting silver mist, walked a being more fearsome than any predator they had ever known. A human. Alone. Yet never unguarded.